very interesting.
Do you get the over unity for a long time, or?
I'm not really sure what this all means. It looks to me like it's indicative of over unity, but I mean, the battery lasts so long. I mean, just a little tiny sliver of energy, you know, it'll last 12 watt hours. Will last the light for like, you know, 16 hours. That's oh, my camera just died. I gotta charge my camera. But yeah, that's a pretty large amount of time considering, you know, and the next best off the shelf component will run maybe 4 hours at 88.5% efficiency, you know, about that. So that's, you know, it's still up for debate. And I don't know enough about wave metrics and all that stuff to read this properly. All I know is it's evidence that we're getting a synthetic AC, like I predicted. And it's evidence that our system is in full resonance because no matter where we probe the system, we're getting the same exact waveform from the battery all the way, you know, from the coils outputs to the lightning thief outputs. Everything produces those three elements: the sine wave at the macro, the nested harmonics when you zoom in at the standard scale, and then the micro scale shows that I don't know, like 0 point event. It's really amazing how like the waveform is so similar on all aspects of the system, only it's clearly larger coming out of the coil versus coming out of the battery.
Yeah, because I was wondering if it's some sort of some spring, like a bouncing effect of the static electricity and all the electric field that the coil generates and all that. I don't know, it's just an idea. So that's why I was asking if it lasts for a long time.
Well,
yeah,
also,
I mean,
an idea. Can you add a second identical coil into it? Try to get them in harmonic resonance and then measure the same wave and see what you get.
So I do have a video of the dual thief setup, which is just that, you know, measuring the secondary coil to see how close it is to the primary, and it gets close, but it's not exactly the same.
Third,
yeah.
Also add a third, right, and just measure the differences and.
Yeah, no, there's gonna be require some tuning for the dual thief, I've discovered, because the waveform is slightly different. It's not on point. But yeah, it's definitely possible that we can do that. I can show the video if I can find it.
Yeah, please do if you got it.
I'm gonna go grab some beer. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Oh, my Canadian Quebec balls, brother. Got to go to the Couche-Tard. No, it's the fridge.
All right, Philip's in the mood.
Is this the pseudo AC I was mentioning before? Pseudo equal bias AC when you zoom out.
Yeah, pseudo AC, synthetic AC, whatever you want to call it. It's a type of synthetic AC that I like to call a resonant pulsed waveform, because what it is it's AC, but not using AC. It's using pulsed forward and backward to produce a synthetic AC between the two. And it's very interesting. I don't know. There's a lot that we have to analyze and uncover still, because this is just the raw data, and I don't really honestly know how to read it all.
Oh, of course. We are all learning this together, and it's a lot, right? And because it's like there's also like negative and cold energy and electricity that we're not taught about and told it doesn't exist, but it completely does and is like the other half of the equation, and then trying to figure them all out, and like each person or inventor essentially entering from a different a field or entry point. Like it's all none of it is unified, right? It's all completely different scrambled fields, and they did that intentionally to complicate electricity in the electricity grid, especially with AC and how they sell it, how they move it, and how they engineer and build it. And right?
Well, hold on one second. Let me show you. I found the video, but I wanted to show you this quick one real quick, just to give you an idea of. Hold on.
Yeah, so don't diodes like add the impulse that switches the DC to AC? Is that one aspect?
Well, you're
this right here.
rectifying. If you're rectifying the AC, it'll become DC.
Okay, that's the inverse. It's the opposite there.
Right. Now,
So this is oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say this is the three characteristics of the waveform. So this is like what you want to look out for. What we're seeing basically on wherever you probe the system, you're seeing these three characteristics. You're seeing this right here, which is some kind of 0 point event or something. I don't know. That's what I'm calling it until I figure out what it is. It looks like energy is just spewing out from both sides though, and then you kind of go zoom out a little bit on the standard scale, which is.
Yeah, it looks like the AC impulse is going very transient.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. And then you zoom out a little bit more. These are all individual strands.
Really? It's
yeah, they're bouncing off of themselves. It's like nested harmonics.
Yeah, you're creating a harmonic, and you're basically
destructing the harmonic.
Yeah, destruction of the harmonic, but also too, the AC waveform is being distorted, and you're getting the transients. It all has to do with the frequency, right? And the frequency obviously is getting distorted by harmonics.
Right. Exactly, it's being distorted. But look, it's all this chaos, and then you zoom out, and it kind of produces this nice, clean sine wave. So cool. So cool.
Real okay, I like this.
That's like different.
Getting into the very basics of Sheila Raman's work.
That's a really different waveform. I haven't seen that before.
This is something new. Yeah, I had to classify it. I had to give it a definition. It is something new. It's weird.
It's no, sorry.
What are you getting that off of, Ben? Is that a rodent coil, or what is that coming off of?
Yeah, so this is coming off of the Dragon 7 coil, the Mark 1. And we're using the Lightning Thief device. And this is what's happening when we use the 40-watt panel. It doesn't happen. This waveform doesn't happen like this with any other light source. I found out it's just a 40-watt panel. So actually, when it's ringing is not when it's fully effective. You want it to not ring, which is what this 40-watt panel, it doesn't sing to you like the other light bulbs do. So I thought that was interesting. So you don't want it to actually sing to produce this waveform.
Nice. Can you run it again? So
let me play the video. So this is the zooming all the way in. You'll get these little convergence points or whatever they're called. I don't know. It's really wild.
Yeah, that's neat.
And it's crucial. And like, if you can zoom into that center point again, it reminds me of the arcs from Sean's Tesla coil, the silver one specifically, as it's diverging out of that singularity or 0 point.
Oh, you're talking about his breakout.
Yeah.
I can see that. It is very similar. But that's a fractal wave pattern, man. It
goes into the actual waves, or each one refracting off of itself. Oh, thank you for the support. Shout out John Sup. Appreciate it, brother. Hope you're well. And have to wish absolutely everybody here a good Friday and happy Easter long weekend. And it's 420 as well, April 20th. So shout out, I think, isn't that Hitler's birthday that he lived and celebrated in Argentina for another 20 or 30 years?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You going there, Bertie, damn you.
Well,
So
hey,
before I hopped on, Philip was saying back time travel is probably not feasible. He just can't get his head around it. So Philip, I mean, this is how I think about it. And anything to do with time travel and that level of time dilation, okay, is going to be on the other side of the Planck scale. Okay. Once you cross over the other side of the Planck scale, time and space is in a collapsed state, where it's all just homogeneous. So where you pop out, this side or that side becomes, more practical under that train of thinking. If you're thinking as time as just like some kind of movie strip that you can't reverse and that is gone once it's passed,
time.
That's just not, that's not the way that the Planck scale works,
So I see one-dimensional time as like a disc, like a record, but like just a disc, your CD, your page in a book. And then as you're going through each moment of time, you're flipping through like those old 8mm films of like as you're experiencing through time. And then each consciousness individuality itself is a third dimension of its own existence, a full volume of time, reference, and space. And yeah.
Sir, I'm not on enough mushrooms to understand what you're saying.
No, you don't need mushrooms, but it is out of the box. It's scaling dimensional geometry.
Correct.
But that's a whole other discussion.
All right, guys, this is the waveform for the dual thief output.
Space Case, how are you,
so
brother?
Here. Oh yeah, that's the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. My camera died.
And then next time, try to recharge your camera before the show.
No, it was recharged. It only holds a charge for like an hour or so, and then I should get a second battery is what I need.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised these cameras and iPhone, they don't have multiple batteries in them. We're so stuck with one battery, so that's pretty stupid.
Well, if you had a backup for when your battery doesn't take a charge anymore, then how are they going to sell you something new? It's not meant to be like durable. It's meant to die.
Yeah,
right. They're designed to die, just like the light bulb. The original light bulbs that they made lasted forever, and then the quality just went down, right? And then there's the Saudi LED light bulbs that also pretty much last forever, that Siemens or whatever the hell like made it so they can't be constructed, built, or sold outside of Saudi Arabia or imported to Europe and North America.
Yeah, I've heard that, man. That's crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This has to do with getting your money more than one time.
It's the elite, the kings, the monarchs, the sultans, whatever. They're allowed to have their eternal light bulbs, their eternal flames. Just us peasants and muggles out here, we have to build our own. But it's that you have to know that it's possible, and these lovely gentlemen are doing it.
Just think about how much more you would have if you never ever had to replace anything you already had.
Right? Or just how simple it is to actually turn your vehicle that's like gas or diesel into a hybrid hydrogen from water, from your alternator into your fuel injection source. And it's a mixture that you're literally cutting down the greenhouse gas emission by whatever percentage that's being replaced by the hydrogen and oxygen made from water directly before going into the combustion chamber.
Yeah, it's the only nuance to that is if you're gonna have like a hydrogen cell, yeah, you have to be able to recondense the emissions, because then you just throw the hydrogen and oxygen levels in the atmosphere into full whack, because you can take it from a trapped form in water, and at a highly accelerated rate, you're splitting it. So
it's cheaper to just buy it. It's so cheap anyways to just buy it in
Compressed explosive canister
yeah.
that they have to sell you instead of just water that's like makes up 2/3 of our planet.
Yeah, by the way, but talking about electrolysis, all you have to do is heat up the water to.
No, you don't even have to do that, my friend. And that's actually a misdirection, because as soon as you have to add heat, that is taking a large energy input that's already going to weaken your.
I
You
know.
want the opposites.
well, if you really want to accelerate it, why don't you just use ultrasound to break it into a vapor, and then do it that way? It's way more efficient than whatever else.
That's brilliant.
You can do that with ultrasound. It's like the vibration that Tesla keeps talking
Wow, I
about.
never would have thought of that.
Yeah, if you use right, exactly, ultrasonic to break it into a vapor, it splits apart the water molecules into single molecules, more or less, and then you use your charge separation just to vaporize it.
Does it work?
I don't know, but why not? Tell me, tell me the reason why it wouldn't, because I'm lost as to why it wouldn't.
No, that's brilliant. I think that would work.
Yeah, you have much higher surface area.
Well, if I just jumped on here, but
hey,
if I'm not mistaken, you guys are talking about using ultrasonic fog generator with water and the use of high voltage in order to very efficiently, far more efficient than electrolysis numbers, I might add, split that water. Oh, and by the way, your thinking is right in line with what's already been claimed to have been done.
So there you go. See, I know without knowing all the time.
That's the best place to be. That means you are on the right path.
Yeah, look at that. There it is.
Don Smith. Kaboom. And Mike, Faraday Research, you want to talk a bit about Don Smith and your work with it?
Well, I didn't do actually any electrolysis with it, but I did do most of his transformer experiments, spark gap, and
Don Smith it worked. Electrolysis? I was not even aware of that.
Yeah, so he was working on a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of stuff he didn't disclose either. He was very cryptic in most of his lectures that he did. So some of those lectures you had to watch a few times and listen closely to what he was saying in a lot of the stuff he was doing. But there was a guy that was doing what we were talking about, the using the fogger. Yeah,
that's what makes the Brown's gas very easily, right? It's an ionized state of HHO. And yes, that is one key.
I'm trying to remember his name. He just passed away about a year ago. He made a generator. Actually, I have a copy of his patent somewhere on my computer. Using the Fogger device.
Tesla Tech a few times.
Yeah, he was at the last Tesla Tech. I think it was 4 years ago, and I heard he passed away about a year or two ago.
But can you get the frequency of the hydrogen molecule with sound? Or?
Yeah, that's a whole other one. The resonant frequency of hydrogen, Philip. You're bang on with that. Mm-hmm. That's a key part.
So they just have to be tuned a little bit differently from part A to part B.
And
somebody said something interesting. Same as gasoline. If you were to atomize gasoline, it would be way more efficient, because there's so much waste and inefficiency in a fuel injection system or in a carbureted system. It's basically relying on high pressure to pseudo atomize it. If you were to actually
atomized, when it's broken down, that is breaking the bond, so it's now in this not nano state, or essentially monoatomic state, or how it all interacts.
It's called Schwinger limit. I think it's called breaking the Schwinger limit.
No, the Schwinger limit is the ultimate limit.
Well, it's breaking the ion bond of the outer electron shell and the others. And the key part that was discussed with Jeremy and Mark the other day is when an electron jumps from a covalence bond to another, a photon is emitted with each, and that's this.
Which brings up something really important, Bernie. You have exactly called it right. And if you want to make this more efficient, this whole entire process, that can be done simply by adding photonic energy into that pond fog. You're already preconditioning it because water is already capable of absorbing several different wavelengths just as a whole molecule. And hydrogen is able to absorb just the widest number of wavelengths of pretty much everything on the periodic table.
Is it between, would a good wavelength be between, like, say, 640 nanometer to like 960?
They are within that range. Yeah, it has many absorption frequencies within that range. You should take a look at the whole, maybe Bernie can pull it up right now. If you take a look at the emission spectrum of the hydrogen atom, or just of hydrogen proton nucleus, then you're gonna see what I'm talking about here, because it's like over 16 different frequencies. Yeah. See if you can pull that one up, because it's a pretty impressive chart.
I was just about to go grab a demonstration of what we've been talking about with the different gases being produced through electrolysis. But Mike, do you mind, or someone with a computer?
Well, yeah, I could look it up. One thing I want to note is using the infrared spectrum was also used in Malcolm Bendel's thunderstorm generator as well. So I assume, I'm not certain, I think the IR emissions probably between 640 and 960 nanometer. He's actually charging the electrolysis as it comes out, goes through the chamber of light, and then from the light goes into the spherical chambers on the other side of the engine. So
yeah, the sequence is a little off. They take the exhaust gas and they introduce ionized air into the cavitation bubbler. That then goes into the second flow.
And what is ionized? It is, you're breaking not just one outer electron covalent, but you're actually igniting, energizing it into the plasma state when it's in a single atomized monatomic state. And
that's when all the hydrocarbons go bye-bye. So during that plasma state, that's when everything breaks down.
Booyah! There you go. Yep,
that'd be that.
Way to
they
call
get further energized in the late stage, reverse flow process, though, once they start, because you have it positively charged, on the inside or outside. I don't know. It's hard to describe that because it goes both. But in the first stage of that pipe, it's positively charged. And the second state is negatively charged, counter-rotating. So it creates a charge differential on the stainless steel of the of the pipe itself, which further furthers the plasmatic cavitation outside of the the phase differential of the bubble in the water.
Yeah, I think that generator has some potential. He's got.
Joe, you're so bang on with that. Sorry to interrupt. And that a couple of these key parts are actually having 3 pipe cylinders within each other, so that you've got these 3 different fields that you're then manipulating and getting the field within a field within a field equilibrium.
Right. The system is a yin yang. The system is a yin yang. So it's positive and negative. It's clockwise and it's counterclockwise. It's left and it's right. Yeah. So everything is both an opposite, and they switch.
A lot of this goes back.
right? It's a refinement process to reach like that core, sound frequency resonance,
Well, the thunderstorm generator does more than they advertise it to do, because Malcolm Bendel was at least smart enough when he went in for the patents to not make the claims that would get his patents denied. Right.
Yeah.
So there's certain claims that we all know that you can't make. Now, if you look at their early disclosures and their early works that they put out that you can no longer find on YouTube and stuff, at least as far as I know, it used to be a closed system. They used to have valves that they would open and close simultaneously that would actually feed the exhaust gas.
Oh yeah, that's
directly into the carburetor. Recycle it all, and they could even cut the fuel at a certain point.
That's such a crucial part, and that I forgot to mention when I was saying that anybody can easily convert their gasoline car to a hybrid water car. You have to have the carburetor you have to have a system with a carburetor, and then that the exhaust is flowing back into that carburetor.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to the PAP engine. That goes back to, I think, to the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah, good reference on that one, too.
Yeah.
There's actually another interesting idea, which you guys may not have heard about. I've never seen anybody actually build it, but there's no technical reason why it can't be built and why it wouldn't work. And that's the concept of taking a magnetron and using it to run an engine. So one day, some backyard junkie has this great idea while taking out the spark plug on his lawnmower, looks at the end of the spark plug, and thinks to himself, geez, that looks an awful lot like a magnetron antenna would fit inside there. So I wonder if we heated up the cathode and kept that nice and hot, and then we just dumped impulse power into the magnetron, would we get a large enough burst of EM energy to completely turn ultra-fine water mist from a pond fog or something else? Water mist has been preconditioned, and basically you wouldn't even see this mist if it's fine enough, but it would be very high density, and you just slam that with microwaves. Now, only trouble with that thought in realistic application is that the 2.4 gigahertz frequency of a normal magnetron is way too long of a wavelength to do much work on individual water molecules. It's actually absorbed most effectively when the object itself is conductive and contains water to the point where the full wavelength, or at least 1/4 of the wavelength of the 2.4 gigahertz signal, fits within and can short out within the material, causing eddy currents to heat it up. But at higher frequencies, you can actually individually access the water molecules, and you could add a huge amount of thermal energy or Brownian motion, therefore going from the vapor state where you have suspended individual particles into the steam state where you have in the vapor state you have suspended individual droplets, and then in the steam state you have just individual molecules, right? So you can go through that transition, and when it transitions like that, the volume expands 1,800 times, roughly thereabouts. So definitely enough to run an engine potentially if you have the right pump frequency.
Like microgravity.
Never heard it compared to microgravity. This is more a matter of whether or not the water molecule fits within some construct of the wavelength of the pump frequency where it can actually absorb the energy instead of just being slightly wiggled around by it. Because you really want to impart momentum into it so that you increase the Brownian motion and go into that gas phase transition.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just about being able to get that process done efficiently enough within the cycle of the engine itself. Like, you would need to keep up with that same stamina, which could potentially actually be a limiting factor of it, being that it's wavelength based, because there would kind of technically be like a maximum speed that it would be able to accomplish that, and that would be the maximum running speed of the engine, unless it was a separate.
Well, you wouldn't come up with limits like that using a pulse klystron at the right frequency, because the pulse is going to be infinitely shorter, and you really only need it super active right at top dead center.
Okay.
And like 1 degree past that. So realistically, you have all the rest of the downstroke that you can still be adding energy but it's most effective if you can get it going at top dead center, and then you really want to keep that energy distributed through the entire duration of at least the first
Well,
half
that's where I
of the
was going with
downstroke.
it. It sounds like a timing nightmare, is what it sounds like.
It's an electronic control thing, but
okay,
your car solves this timing nightmare very easily with the onboard computer, and that's today ubiquitous.
Jeremiah, that's so dumb that I'm thinking about it, because I'm thinking about it so mechanically that I didn't.
Yeah, don't worry. You won't have to adjust points on this or anything like that to get it tuned in, and you wouldn't even want to bother.
Right.
Like, you
you will take care of all sorts of problems.
Yeah, luckily we live in 2025, where the magic of technology is easily accessible from Alibaba, eBay, Amazon, or just about anywhere else for pennies on the dollar, right? Except for the new U.S. tariffs with China, which is plenty controversial already, and so you're going to be paying more for the same stuff that you were getting for super cheap, because turns out that, the whole child labor and forced labor things didn't really work out that well for society, and so prices are going to go up.
Hey, check this. I have a theory. So you do away with all the factories in China, and you try to bring it back to the United States, or North America, call it, right? But now we're pulling for huge AI infrastructure and automation, and the return of the return of industry. So I don't even think it's far-fetched at this point that the kind of end goal idea here is just to be able to have automated factories for all this stuff. Basically, have it pumped.
There's a problem, though. There's a big problem with it, and with the tariffs and all this stuff, we can bring back almost all manufacturing here to the States, or any other country that buys stuff from China can bring the manufacturing back to their homeland, right? But the problem is that China right now relies on the United States for soy and a variety of other critical food imports. And they don't have the infrastructure set up right now, or the manpower, to realistically supply all of that themselves. Yeah. And so, like, if we suddenly tried to do, a cut-off cold turkey, you're going to get the same kind of result that you get when you try to cut an addict off, and you're
right. Well, it's a humanitarian crisis at that point. Not necessarily of our making, but
No, but if we chose to do it, if we chose to be so inhumane as to cut off an entire country's populace because of actions of their government, political pissy match, right? Yeah, this is the problem. So that's where the big danger comes in. China might have to take drastic action in their own opinions.
Jeremiah, the whole purpose of this stream, Free Energy Friday, like Mike said to begin with, energy independence and
boom, what am I even saying? We solve that, and this problem just goes away. So hey, I guess, guys,
that's exactly where I'm going with it too.
That's where we're all going with it. That's right.
Well, with the AI though, I'm saying, like, if they're looking to build the AI infrastructure, they admittedly don't have the ability to meet the power needs of that. So you can't have one without the other. And
so that's I think the only thing holding actual AGI back itself that already exists and is
it's power hungry,
is that it doesn't have the power requirements. So that's why it's kind of risky to keep feeding all of these breakthrough energy things into it.
No, but
I will tell you personally that I don't. I will not give AI the secret to the free energy conundrum. I will not feed it any of that information, because I just remember that scene from The Matrix where we're introduced to the Sentinels and they're flying around AG like. Yeah. I just don't want to teach AI how the heck to do that.
Right.
Talking about energy, if they were using C++ instead of Python, they would save 90% of energy consumption. I already made the calculations, so it's possible it's possible to maximize the energy consumption just with the programming language.
Yeah, right. Well, we're the most energy inefficient understanding and application ever, because we think of electricity as only energy, when in fact, say for example, electroculture, and then there's also magnetoculture, and that's just harvesting radiant energy that is radiation, not electricity, and transferring it into usable energy in the plant, the life, the cells, and the fields. And that once we start understanding that, we're able to use that 99% of quote unquote dark energy or vacuum catastrophe. It's that it's not the only hot electrical energy out there.
Right, but that's when you run. But the whole reason it's like that is by design. That's the 100-year-old problem.
Exactly.
How do you meter and charge for what you can't control because it's so readily available?
Yeah, that's right. The future of energy is local production. It's going to be just you make it where you need the energy, and preferably we get to the point where the individual appliances, gadgets, or apparatus have the energy generators built into them, so you don't even need to have a central hub or something. The only purpose of that will be like adapting old technology. Like, let's say you already own a nice fridge and own a nice electric cooktop. Yep. And you don't want to have to buy a new one that has a built-in power source.
Right.
That never runs
that's
out.
Phase one. Right. That's phase one rollout is what that is, because nobody is going to go out and replace every single thing they own automatically with that. And, right. So that's phase one rollout.
Ironically, not Nikola Tesla like company at all, Tesla, is producing the Powerwall to introduce this idea in mass to at least get people ready for the idea of local power distribution, because every home should be a power node.
Exactly. That's what the Tesla batteries, essentially were with solar panels originally.
But not every home has the ability to have solar panels. Think about mine, for example. Exactly. It's quote unquote home, but it's not my home. I rent it. And it's in a building that's shared with a lot of other people. And I don't have any ability to place solar panels anywhere because there's no spot to stick them.
I've got a question for you, Jeremiah, about the old technology dynamos, which were DC generators, and that in like the 1800 popular mechanics, they were showing these dynamos being like powered off of home sinks. So it's like you'd have a dynamo connected to your kitchen sink, you'd run the water and power your dynamo, you'd get electricity from that.
I've never seen that, but I would sure love to see it.
You know, the interesting thing about this, and I've been saying it for a while, and I guess like you could either agree with me or disagree with me. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but like the whole idea of 0 point energy is very, very misnomer. That's like, it's all 0 point energy. What do you think is happening anytime you mechanically spin a generator to create electrical current?
I think that's
all coming from there. So the question.
I disagree with that too. I think 0 point is anything under the Planck scale, the Casimir effect sort of thing.
There he's getting at it.
But check this out. So the question is kind of wrong. The question really is, how do you create, that rotational force, electronically, rather than mechanically? So that's the question. And that's what everybody's setting out to do here, right? So, but that is really the question. But what you consider either high efficiency over unity or 0 point energy, it's all coming from the same, etheric oscillations.
Those are three different aspects of engineering, but they're all crucial.
Right. They're all part of the same thing is the point. How you make the power is secondary to the idea of the mechanics behind it. So rather than spinning magnets mechanically, if you could spin magnetic fields through modulation and geometry, well, then there you go.
Or when you can combine both of those aspects, then you get a magnitude of even higher increase. And it's combining all of them. While I'm outside, Mike, what were you using? Were you using carbon for creating any of your battery nanomaterials?
Or was a lot of carbon, yeah. Carbon's a very big component. That's graphene. Yeah.
There's just one thing. I do want to say one thing too about this idea of cold electricity and single wire electricity. Normally, devices lose or waste a bunch of power in various different forms. Take, for example, a filament lamp, regular Edison-style tungsten filament bulb, right? Most of the energy that's consumed by that bulb isn't radiated out as heat or converted into light.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just being conducted under normal circumstances ohmically, and so you end up having power transfer or power flow in that circuit that doesn't generate either useful thing.
Yo, man, I literally said that exact same thing the other day when I was on Nathan's channel.
It's
That's
only
dead on.
not useful because our current
thought about that.
electrical
It's
digital technology is
You look awake.
engineered to not use that cold electricity.
It's because the way that we pay for power and the way we generate power right now is based on the loop principle of a closed circuit. Now, when you open that circuit up on one side and it's not a closed circuit anymore, now the filament bulb has no losses. See, a filament bulb on its own never has losses. That's what people misunderstand. They look at a good old Edison lamp and they say, well, that's a really inefficient way to generate light. And from the conventional electrical standpoint of how we use electricity, that's correct. It is inefficient to use a filament lamp because it's so conductive. But if we don't allow the current a return path to actually short out the circuit and discharge the potential, as we would, as Bearden would say, stop killing the dipole. Okay, so if we don't kill the dipole unnecessarily, but we just simply allow the energy to pass through the lamp, and only the energy that can be converted by the lamp itself into thermal energy, heat, or radiative energy, photonic, in all of its many wave bands, all the energy that doesn't get converted into one of those two forms and just passes through the lamp goes to the end of that wire and bounces off of it. Instead of actually shorting out the circuit and killing the dipole, it bounces back, and then we collect it on the back end as it heads into the circuit again.
Jeremiah, the crucial part in engineering that aspect is that you don't want the heat, you don't want the resistance. You
we do
want the cold light. No, when you're using it with lighting systems, right? So the LED.
For pure light, right?
Cold, yeah, exactly. So for light, you only want to use that cold light. As soon as you're using heat, you're wasting energy that could be going back into that system, like you just explained.
Oh, good old BurnEye. They used to call me LED Kid.
Exactly.
I used to be called LED Kid in school, and I can tell you that I love LEDs, but they suck. Okay, LEDs are not the solution to this ultimate problem because they are not good at converting only electricity into light. They do still generate heat. If you want to get into the regime of generating only light, then you need an active plasma. It doesn't have to be a hot active plasma. In fact, the big secret is it can be a cold, negatively entropic active plasma, because plasma happens to be one of the few ubiquitous things in nature that can convert or interact with multiple types of different input energy. You can move or manipulate plasma through magnetic fields, through electric fields, through sonic waves, or just about damn near every other point of interaction. And because plasma interacts with all of these things, you can combine weird types of energy interactions like sound, light, electric fields, and magnetic fields all at the same time in the same device, which is exactly what the gravity wave generator does, and try to utilize these effects for a cumulative phenomena that starts to break the rules in physics.
Well,
through the electromagnetic field, can messages be transmitted through the electromagnetic field?
Yes, but they're far better to transmit directly through the aether.
Yeah, I know, but if you want them to go long range, because, without any disturbance,
if you want them to go infinite range, you use the aether. You don't use an electromagnetic wave.
All right, so check this out. This is kind of interesting with the plasma light situation. When we interviewed Liz, who was the one with the past life recognition on the from Atlantis, without any sort of knowledge of the technology or even really any of the deep stuff that we discussed, she had described this whole lighting situation that was like present throughout the ancient world, where it was literally body conductive induced plasma light, more or less. It's how she kind of described it without saying the words. So, could be onto something there, right?
Oh, very much.
Crucial.
But light.
Maybe I should listen to that.
Yeah, it's a really cool interview.
If you want to give me a link for that, I will take the time to listen. I'm interested in all things alt energy that are actually doable directions that we can go.
Light, like I was explaining before a couple of weeks ago, light, if you annihilate an electron and a positron, it's going to create a photon. But the photon, what it is an electron and a positron entangled. And when you entangle them, the energy is being converted into kinetic energy. I made a calculation. You may want to look them back in a few weeks ago.
I know exactly where you're going with this, but proceed, and then I'll answer that question at the end.
Yeah, so that's all a photon is. It's an entangled electron and positron that are together with some kinetic energy, but it has a mass, obviously, and photon has a mass, and you can then split the photon back into electron and positron,
right?
Using whatever technique.
So let me point out something that could get me in a lot of trouble if I had ever signed an NDA or worked for government, which I have done neither of. So here's the magical little secret that breaks physics in terms of energy production. At the Schwinger limit, we know that it requires 2 photons of 511 kiloelectron volts, equivalent photonic energy, to pump into that space in order to generate a positron-electron particle-antiparticle pair. Now, when these things spontaneously pop out of the vacuum at the Schwinger limit, they require the input or loss of 1.022 mega electron volts of input photonic energy. Here's the great thing. Once those two particles are separated, each can flow through a circuit, but we're probably not going to use the positron, let's face it, because our wires are made of normal matter, which would immediately destroy that positron. Not quote-unquote destroy, but it would recombine it, right? So we would be able to utilize it. However, we can use the electron, and so we can pass it through an electrical circuit once it's been generated and only cost us 1.022 MeV. Now, when the electron comes out of our circuit, we've already used its momentum, and it's now back down to its ground state of having no velocity at the end of the circuit. We can recombine it with our remaining positron that we haven't annihilated yet. And the great thing is when the positron and the electron come back together, they will start to spin together until each of them respectively reaches a differential of 0.65 c, or 0.65 times the velocity of light. And once they reach that, they can finally fall into each other and recombine. They have to reach that necessary energy level, though, before they do. And they won't just go straight together in a direct line of sight path and annihilate. They'll actually cycle around each other, circulate around each other, radiating off a huge amount of conventional electromagnetic energy, which contains the stress energy momentum of that recombination event. It can last quite a while. Like we're talking, millions of rotations that this stuff can radiate off extra electromagnetic energy before it recombines. Now, here's the funny thing. When the positron and the electron come back together, and they do finally kiss and close the yin-yang to its finest size, what happens? Well, when they reach that point, they cross the threshold, on the other side of the Schwinger limit, they give us back 100% of all the energy we put in. So everything that happened between when we took them out of the vacuum and when we put them back into the vacuum, 100% of all that was for free because they give us back exactly the same gamma photons that we took to make them. Now, the question then becomes, where is the conservation of energy and momentum in the system, considering the fact that in the physics we have now, what I've just said is true?
That's mind-blowing.
How do we reconcile
But isn't what you're
that?
describing like it's a cavitative process? So
You can call it that. Many people have called it that. But even beyond adding extra terms to it and making it more complicated for a fifth grader, I just am curious about the idea of how do we reconcile the fact that we claim you can't get something for nothing, but we take 1.022 MeV to create these particles, and we get back 1.022 MeV when they recombine, and we can do stuff with them in between that actually generates useful actual output power and work function.
right. Well, and then when you do that,
that sounds
over and
awesome.
over and over again on a large scale, then you have everything you need just in those small gaps in between.
Yeah,
It's like
if I was part of any government contract
the
or anything,
time
I would be in
frame?
big
Time
trouble
frame.
right
Like-
now for saying what I just said. But
It's like
I'm
positive.
not.
right? It's like putting stop to time. Like, in the between doesn't really matter.
Entropy, the connecting, unifying aspect of relativity, I guess.
It takes time to do that
So,
process.
so Jeremiah, let me ask you. So, if in the case of your vacuum, if you were just to assume that the vacuum were just analogous to a pressure differential, right? And then you were to use a medium of reaction that when it collapses and gives the energy back, that it causes a secondary reaction of the medium of the pressure differential.
Oh boy, he's getting it.
To then hold it open, then it becomes a sustained reaction of collapsing and expansion in full blown cavitation.
If I could shake your hand right now, I would, because you just nailed it.
Yeah, well, look, I'm a lot of things. I'm a dumb fuck, but
clearly
I do my own thing.
We're all geniuses here. We're just sometimes
I just do my own thinking.
Spectrum a little bit. I'm a little spectrum. Who's not spectrum?
Yo,
right?
you're not dumb at
No,
all.
I'm not on the spectrum either. I'm just me, man.
Yeah,
It's
bogus you ain't on the
when we're
spectrum.
cosmonauts. When our conscious is not with us, it's in outer space retrieving it. That's when I say spectrum. We're on the
again, what Tesla
rainbow
says is my
that's
mind is only a receiver. All knowledge in the universe comes from a cosmic core, and though I've not penetrated into the depths of that core, I know that it exists. And with that base premise, talk about humility, right? The man says, when asked what it's like to be smarter than Einstein, he says, I'm not, I'm just listening better.
Einstein was...
What's that female friend of Einstein's that said that symmetry is not how the universe works, it's asymmetry.
Yeah. Well, actually, we just kind of talked about some of the stuff on Old Man Bill's today when we were talking about laminar flow and turbulence and the relationship between the two of them and how those interaction patterns. So, I mean, there's always a degree of chaos that plays a role in it.
Yeah, but anyways, Einstein was not. Well, I'm not the Einstein hater. I don't care. He got some things right, some things wrong, but he plagiarized a lot of stuff too, and his first wife helped him a lot, and Minkowski, and so on. So
we don't have to hate him, Phil, to call him out on his bullshit and call out the fact that he did steal a lot of his most brilliant works.
Yeah, I know, but every time I say, Einstein was not right, people will say, "Oh, you're an Einstein hater," but that's why I want to say that ahead. And the other thing is, in 1905 and 1915, and before 1940, you could publish anything you wanted. After 1940, the peer reviewing system got over, and that's when they started filtering out what they wanted to hear for mainstream physics.
Phil, you're bang on. That's when Einstein took over the patent office. He literally is the censor that has censored that set the precedent. So it's like he's actually the worst thing that ever happened to physics, and the reason the system is been stuck for 100 years, essentially.
Yeah, but is it him or was it handlers? Because
he was the head of the patent office. That's where he stole so much from.
But he couldn't single-handedly do it by himself. It's a group. Einstein was a part of the Masons or whatever. So
Einstein was a Mason?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they all were.
Can I address two comments real quick that were posted up a while ago? So the first one is from JK Philly Fan. Thoughts on the hydrino states when we were talking about using pond foggers for massively more efficient than Unity water separators. And I can't claim that the hydrino state either exists or that Brilliant Light Power is producing it, because I believe they were the ones responsible for coining that term. But I will say that because of the number of operational modes that the water molecule has, it is very much not outside of quite believable comprehension that you can achieve something like the hadrino state and utilize it for dramatically higher efficiencies above unity. So I am not going to poo-poo that at all from brilliant light power. I just can't verify it either. And the other comment that I wanted to note is John Bigman says, yes, the universe is...
Before you move on,
Okay.
Can you explain what the hadrino state is specifically?
Brilliant light power claims that the hadrino state is a state of energy that water can be put into where it is actually dropped below its normal ground state. And as a result can then absorb thermal energy from the environment or steal it, and so you end up getting more energy out of it once it goes through that transition and steals its energy, because on the output side of that,
created that a few times. It's freaking wild. It's like it'll be minus like 35 outside, and it will still be liquid, and then it's like you'll get the reaction, and then it's like it'll just snap all at once. And
then, it's like a cascading freeze.
Boy, you would have loved Kellynet back in the day, because that was all all this stuff was being done by people then, but. Absolutely, I think there's a lot to it, and as I said, I've not been able to either prove or disprove brilliant light power, but I do know that what they're working with is founded on a huge amount of history from other people who knew what they were doing and had successfully achieved this kind of stuff before. So it's not beyond the scope of possibility that they've actually done what they're claiming. So the other comment is from John Bigman, and he says the universe is not symmetrical, referring to this idea of being able to steal energy from virtual particles of the quantum vacuum. And he's exactly right about that. The universe is not symmetrical, and the question I've always asked is, where is the other side of that asymmetry, and why is it not symmetrical? Could it be something as wild out there as consciousness itself? The very core concept
that's a good question.
Is containing the rest of that energy. That's
if it were symmetrical, nothing would move.
The universe is much.
Symmetry is the heat depth of the universe. Entropy winning.
No, there's definitely overall. It's not discoverable like the way that we're looking for. We're just not looking for the symmetry in the right way. It could ultimately be, upper dimensional symmetry.
Temporal symmetry is one of those concepts. If we had temporal symmetry, all of a sudden, all these things like time crystals become a lot more sensical and start to plug in. But there are so many different types of symmetry that aren't currently part of the base level of thermodynamics as it's currently being utilized. See, thermodynamics doesn't prevent the idea of time symmetry. None of the laws do. And so conservation of energy and conservation of momentum aren't necessarily being violated here. But what I will say is that if you read the Wikipedia definition of what conservation of energy and momentum are, they do require two constituents to be true.
I don't agree with the Wikipedia definition of anything, Jeremiah. I am sorry.
I do agree with some definitions of simpler things, but in this particular case, it's clearly wrong, because the Wikipedia definition says that these rules only apply to quote-unquote closed systems.
Now, the whole thing with the symmetry, though, I find it like trying to gauge symmetry of a house based on being closed into one room of the house,
or a self-replicating system.
I think that,
so where
I think
the
that the
symmetry
Planck scale has a lot to do with it.
At the Schwinger limit, at the Casimir effect size, when it breaks down into that smaller sub particle, there's no subparticle. You're just folding into a different dimension and different symmetry at that point.
Okay, symmetry is the cycling of the energy. Like we have a constant, which is the rotation of the Earth. Okay, so something is cycling, keeping that whole planet, rotating. So the symmetry is that being cycled and being pumped with the solar rays. It gives it, so like we depend on it. And so, there is a symmetry, but it's not like a mirror symmetry,
Yeah.
Right? The end result is the rotation. So there has to be something that is, for every action, there's a reaction, right? So whatever it's getting in, it's the rotation method.
The way I understand it,
you're bang on, Lulu. It's that there's there's one portion where the symmetry breaks and it like inverts, and it's like the yin yang as you go to infinite maximum and infinite minimum, and that's where they have yet. That's where the issue still lies, right?
I mean, like a really good example of that is in Sean's coils, right? When you look at Sean's coils and the plasmatic discharge. Sorry, I can't tell if I'm cutting anybody off or not because everybody's going in and out.
Yeah. No, you're good, Joe. I'm freezing up.
Oh yeah. I was just saying, you know, like in Sean's coils when he does the plasma demonstrations with his geometric Tesla coils, those particular discharges, they have a flow pattern and a symmetry to them where you'll have hot spots and cold spots. You know, and it's visible throughout it. And depending on what the geometry of the particular coil is and its input, it really determines what those flow patterns that you can identify are. But they're just omnipresent. They're always there. It's, you know, and it's really apparent because you get these black voids right next to real hot spots. And then directly opposite that, you get a nice hot spot. So it's almost completely mirrored. And I showed a video on Old Man Builds today of two flames coming into each other in laminar flow and then breaking out into turbulence where they remain completely separate of one another. Okay, with a total line of interaction that kept them completely separate from one another the whole time. What was interesting is they remained completely symmetrical based on the interactive line torsion that was occurring as it transitioned from a laminar flow state to a turbulent flow state. So, you know, like this stuff it's everywhere you look is the whole point. So as above, so below.
Gotcha.
As above, so below.
Space Case, Adam, you wanna give us
Yo,
some
buddy,
updates?
welcome back. If he's got signal,
I may have signal. I don't know.
kill your
If I leave the
video
camera
because
off, I
you're
might.
certainly going to lose it if you don't. Oh wait, you've already done that. Sorry.
Hey, Space Case, long time no hear. What are you up to?
Well, a couple of things. One is I'm trying to get a device running that at one point I saw 10 to 15 amps of current flowing through a single wire. It messed with the flow rate of time a little, and Jeremiah got me with the idea of imagine time-dilated electrons. And that was an interesting... Anyway, I ran it, I think, 27 years ago or something last, and I'm trying to get it working again because I know a lot more now. And so that's my current project. It's a modified Wimhurst machine with steel segments and only half the shorting bars there. So it's one side's positive and the other side's negative. So it's a bit of a variation on a Wimhurst machine, but not too far different.
Yes, indeed. That thing is going to be so awesome when it gets working. As I told him, I said, the moment you get that thing working, expect me to be on a plane headed out to you.
And the moment you get that thing working on a third generational level, we'll have a portal, or maybe the fourth, but I think there's something to that.
Yeah, we've already got quantum entanglement, right, with the first generation. Now we're going back to the second generation because the first generation might be broken, might not be. We don't know yet. But let's suppose that we can't get the original machine of 27 years ago working. Well, that's not going to stop us because we now understand the fundamental principles that have to be in place, as in the minimal conditions that must be achieved in order for this machine to work. And we know exactly what we're looking for and how to do it. It's just a matter of putting in the work and making it. And it's a very complex machine to build. Now, maybe I shouldn't say complex. I should say it's a very laborious machine to build. It could be automated on a factory line to be put together in like 2 minutes.
Right.
So
all those steel segments are a pain.
Yes, they are.
So you said you're gonna time dilate the electrons or something?
Yeah, it appears to mess with the flow rate of time. Mechanical and digital clocks doesn't seem to matter. It messes with the flow rate of time. And yeah, like DC
So
current
that,
running one wire.
that means you create a energy density like large, like dense enough to create time dilation.
Precisely.
Can you? I'm very interested to hear more about it. Are you still on the Space Case server?
Yep, and you're still there too. You could check in at any time.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah, click on Curious Device when you get there. That's the channel that you're going to want to check out.
Yeah, I'm assuming that just works off of the principles of like toroidal field compression. No,
double toroid field compression.
Because that's what I was looking for, to create time dilation, but with a charge large enough to create time dilation. But I calculated I needed 10 petacoulombs for that, which is very, very extremely large. But if you can do that already, man, I'm very interested.
Oh, you can do all of the same thing if you just take the 1 coulomb and you just cycle it and circulate it, keeping all of the stress energy momentum trapped in the same localized space over the period of as little as a minute or so. Actually, I would ask you, how long did it take for the machine to ramp up the very first time that it did the thing?
I'm not sure. Certainly less than a couple of hours. But I really didn't notice until it started doing these weird things. And I'm like, what the heck?
So let's think about the energy input. It draws 300 watts nominally, right?
That's on high. It probably was no more than 50 watts in.
But 50 watts over 3 hours, that's a decent amount of energy to pour in. Now, if you had all the energy trapped and it was the instantaneous energy of 1 cycle, let's say, we're talking about a significant amount of localized stress. And here's the thing, because it's a nonlinear equation, Phil, you may not need that petawatts of energy, because keep in mind that every watt that you add is going to change the amount of energy that you need on the next watt that you add. So you'll need less and less and less as you go in.
Is it like a radiation spike, like a radiation?
You saturate the coil and you're done.
Where it imprints, and then whenever any energy, like it slowly decays, but it always leaves a marker. I mean,
yeah, in this case, it neither decays nor dissipates. That's why it's able to do what it's able to do so quickly. Well, because once this machine has built up the field, once the machine is built up, as Adam explains, you can turn the machine by hand by sticking your hand on the crank of one side as if both balls are connected. And that simple rotation of ultra low RPM, like maybe, let's say it's 10 RPMs turning it by hand. Not even. You can make it do the thing once the field is established.
Yep.
Because you know what time dilation means. That's actually it's very important, because if you can time dilate, if you can create a shock wave of time dilation, you can alter the projectiles coming at you. You can deflect them. So it's very valuable for the U.S. military, whether you like them or not. But there's a lot of money to be made right there.
Yeah, I don't like them at all, and I wouldn't sell this to any of them.
Enough for anything. I have a hunch that they already have that shit figured out.
It's for defense,
I want to say though,
pretty sure Jack Sarfati actually put that forward about a year ago on Alien Scientist channel.
I absolutely love the people in our U.S. military. I just do not at all trust, as far as I can kick a pebble, the military-industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But I have no problem with the people in it.
I've heard so many funny things about military-industrial complex that just made me chuckle. I heard this one moron on the internet go on and on about how could they possibly have any control over the U.S. government when the government could just walk in there. I'm like, do you understand that if they're the ones holding the technology, What are you going to do? Roll into Skunk Works with M1 Abrams tanks and be like, give up your technology to us? It's like they'd be like, they're the ones with the technology. Who's holding the gun at that point?
And how
we've already paid for it.
So
Right.
Yeah, they already have the tech.
I don't think there's anything you can
cut
offer
them
them
off
that they don't
from
already
getting
have.
new money, but we can't cut them off from having the tech they already have. That's a losing battle. You're not gonna beat them at their own game because
How
let's
did
face
Trump
it, they
get
are better
reelected?
at it.
Exactly. But that creates like a state of duress for the government at that point too, because there could be more to it than we know.
100%. Not even POTUS is privy to what's going on there.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, technology is you can replicate it, but knowing the physics and science of how to put it, because you could, when you see the universe in a different way. You see it as, oh, I could put this with this, and it makes this, because the science of it, not necessarily the technology. It doesn't matter. You could replicate it once you know the science.
Yeah, from my mentor, that may or may not have affiliations with a white and black tailed animal company, represented as their mascot, right? He described his department as the weird science and fucking magic, end quote, department. Because what they did is they would go in, and the stuff that they did was so weird, so unusual, so inexplicable to the rest of the engineers that they just said, hey, that's weird science. We don't even know what you do, but you just come in and solve all the problems. So keep doing that. If you can't explain it to us, that will be really nice. But keep doing that.
Yeah, well, that could be Pandora's box. That's a whole nother side of the conversation, I suppose.
Well, it's a huge part from my history, anyways, because that's the guy. That's one of my 7 mentors who taught me this stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What people need to understand is that this magic has always existed. It's technology, and it's being hidden from us by ourselves or a faction of ourselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is
guys,
why I
I'm
plan on giving all of it away.
That's what we've been doing.
Guys, go get some beers, man. I'm the only one drinking right now.
Chin chin.
Hey, it's not so bad to be alone in that. I'm enjoying a good fizz.
Phil, is it because you want to sell everything to the military complex that
right?
you need to have a couple of drinks?
No, but I mean, it's if we don't, we gotta be patriotic a little bit, because if we share everything with the whole world for free, China is gonna take advantage of it.
So they should take advantage of it, because here's the thing. You know what I talked about earlier?
Away for free. The whole world's going to take advantage of it, and it's going to break down all the powers that be. And it's that the control system on our side is still using the threat of the control system on the other side, but it's like, no, the whole control system will be down.
What if none of the humans are in control? Not China, not us.
Source to everybody.
Booyah!
Like that movie, The Day After Tomorrow.
I feel like the movie The Drunken Master with Jackie Chan.
You got to remember, it's a matter of being the keepers, right? That's how the system is right now. The keepers of, who can screw things up the worst. It's like any law enforcement or authority, right? There's only ever so many people to enforce whatever it is, and way more people subject to it. That's always the dynamic. Where does the power really lie? So you need these power imbalances in order to keep this in their minds. I'm not saying it ought to be that way or it should be that way.
You're just saying it is.
But that's the way that it is. And realistically, human nature has proven no better than, somebody's going to always want to be in charge. So the question is, do you want it to be you or someone else?
Well, that's not necessarily the core of the problem, because somebody's always going to want to be in charge, and that really exists because of egos.
Out there battling to be in the in-charge seat.
Yeah, the real problem is that people demand somebody to be in charge of their own lives. Can you imagine voluntarily waking up one day and saying, I love my life, but I just don't know how to live it myself. Let me pass off that authority to somebody else who can tell me how to do it better.
Well,
Can you imagine?
Well, then listen, that's the oldest psyop of all time. That's, without me, what are you? Right? Listen, I never drank that freaking Kool-Aid.
Yeah, because you'd have
You
to be
don't have to
insane.
drink it.
And it makes you kind of wonder about the rest of the world and how
Yeah,
insane
well,
they are.
right. There's just a whole lot of people in this world just simply trying to make it.
It's
You know what I
innate.
mean? And it's easy to walk the line. It's hard to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
Yeah, craziness.
Man, heavy conversation. Leaves crickets at the end because that's a lot to think about.
Very
It
deep.
is.
There's no cricket here outside this time of year.
Ha!
When you realize the potential necessary evils of things that you inherently disagree with in your core and know it shouldn't be the case, it sucks. The conundrum.
Very much. Well, we can fix it, and that's what we're here today to do. Discuss the topics, work them out, get busy in the lab afterwards.
Like a gun?
Yep.
I mean, that's a lifesaver, if you ask me.
It can save your life in an emergency, but ultimately we would eliminate the
Yeah,
need for
save the
anybody to
world's
ever
life.
need a gun. Because
The world
why
of
do you
life.
need a gun if you're not having to
Just look at
operate
the Nazis.
outside of a structured system?
Well, you need
Took all the
abundance of
guns.
energy. Abundance of energy to
First
create.
thing they did.
Yeah, that's the first thing to do, and after that we can feed everybody, and nobody's gonna be angry anymore.
Exactly. No one's going to be hungry, and they're going to have energy to do whatever they need, right? To move.
We'll have to
freely,
still
to
be
build.
angry. We can't get rid of our human nature. Anger is there for a very good reason, so we've got to keep it. We just need to stop directing it towards each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where am I? There we go. Got to flip this over. Mike, while I have you, how do I utilize these carbon tubes with the electrode in the best manner?
Well, you're going to need a separator, okay, to separate the anode and cathode. Closer you go together, the higher current you get. The further away you go, you'll get more voltage, but your current goes down. So anything that is non-conductive,
like not too dark to see, like the plastic water tube they got.
Well, you got to make sure that the ionic flow can go through that median.
Is he talking about your carbon magnesium power cell converter?
Yeah.
Okay, can I mention something about that? BurnEye, if you're trying to design a more efficient power cell than what Mike's already done and what I've replicated his work of, then consider where the potential and the current is coming from. So the current comes from the total surface area of both strips.
Okay, so I'm gonna want like copper piping with the carbon.
No, you need no. Let me just explain. Sorry, just give me a minute here to kind of get through this. So you have two things. You have the total surface area of the strip surface, which is one electrode, to the carbon surface, which is the other electrode. Then you have the gaps between the strips. And the gap between the strip represents a breaking point where you have an evanescent wave that travels through that as energy is being converted. And most of the energy right now in his power cell is coming from the uninhibited surface area between the two plates, between your solid carbon core and your thin, what do they call that, ribbon style wrapped magnesium sheath. If you decrease the magnesium sheath to a square conductor, or flat conductor, so that basically you have a really minimal width of that conductor, and then the spacing between the conductors is approximately equal to the width of the conductor. Then if you farther that to then space the conductors and their width, which is the same, to an equal distance away from the carbon rod, you can generate a standing wave resonance mode between the two systems, and now you can do something more than just extract the DC power output, which is
the information I needed to hear.
Right. That's mainly where the battery is functioning right now. It's purely electrolytic for the most part. And the tiny little bit that's not electrolytic, that is ambient energy conversion, is mostly lost because you have such small, what they call screen door effect, where you mostly have screen and very little door. So if we can increase the screen size to be 50%, then you can generate the resonance modes and start to extract the AC component out of that device by driving it with an AC component load.
Okay. That's a crucial part of I've got a couple ideas that we'll talk after being live on that I've got for that, but I'm also interested in the aspect of using the carbon electrode aspect to collect isotopes on the different charges.
That's where I'm ready to send you my money for those isotopes that are isolated out.
Yes, right. So if I disappear, y'all know exactly why. But
yeah, either I kidnapped him or somebody else did.
Right. Anywho, can't really show, it's too dark out here, but got what I needed out of that. Be right back here.
It's dark because it's disclosed. You cannot share it with the world.
Despite his best efforts of shining light on the topic.
Yeah.
Can we sing the Brady Bunch theme song?
Yeah, sure.
It looks like
that's what it looks like.
We do look
We're
like
like, no, Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares, yeah, that one. I forgot all about that one.
I should point out the audience isn't seeing that same display. That's just what we're seeing.
Oh, fair.
His name is Tyler.
Are the Hollywood Squares of science.
Hey, what happened to that guy in Vancouver? What's his name again? The popular guy.
Hutchison?
Yeah. What is
Hutchison,
he doing right now?
He still lives in Minnesota. I know he had some health issues there a little while ago.
He's in
Yeah,
Minnesota,
Nancy actually saved his life. Shout out Nancy.
Yeah.
That'll be a first.
He lives in Minnesota right now?
Yeah, he's been in Minnesota for the last 5-10 years now. Since he's been with Nancy, he moved to the U.S.
Okay.
So that's barely the U.S. That's like just over the border.
Yeah. Yeah, if he has to jump ship, he doesn't have to go far, right? So,
yeah, he's got a channel, but, as much as I respect the man, his channel's hard to watch.
Yeah, it's I think he's been exposed to so much.
Yeah.
I think he's been exposed to so much, it's really affected him. And
might have changed some of his genome or something,
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Hold on.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm telling you. I saw the 9 boxes. I was like, there we are.
Oh, man.
I actually grew up in a house with 8 kids.
Oh, wow. That sounds terrible.
I agree with Mike fully.
No, wait, there were 7 of us. Sorry.
That must have been noisy.
You have to wake up when the first one wakes up every day, because the first one is gonna make all the noise.
Yeah, real loud house situation.
Yeah, for real. Mad props to the parents in the house, man, because being an adult in that circumstance sounds like fucking miserable.
Hopefully,
and I love kids, but I'm saying,
hopefully you had at least 4 bathrooms there.
Yeah, kids are our future, but I do not want one of my own.
Yes, right? Maybe when we're like 200, because we got the Ormus monoatomic.
Yo, that looks like you got your kids at the bottom of that jar right there, Bernie.
Right? But I know, and isn't it weird? No, well, I guess that's why the ancient alchemists and the occult called it like God's semen or something. but it is plasma. So, is this the semen of the universe when you break metals down into this pure powder? And that I've been perfecting each pure metal into these pure white monoatomic states, and now harvesting it to actually dry it out into the powder to expand the agricultural alchemy experiments that I've been doing, and see if I can replicate getting the 6-foot tall lettuce plants again, but without using gold, instead using something cheaper like copper or the iron or the zinc or a combination. And I'm going to be testing all of them, as well as silver and gold again this summer. And yeah, just the process of rinsing it all out, and that there's different materials where there's actually nano metal left, then there's colloidal, then there's plasmids, and then there's the pure white monoatomics. And then on top of that, there is also the ionic, which is the pure metal elements that are dissolved into the water itself, as well as the oxides and hydroxides that come off. So there's just a plethora of potential nano metamaterial material science production going on in very simple electrolysis with a very small amount of electrical energy. A lot of time not even needing an actual electrical input, just the charge flow direction engineered into its system. And that's kind of how nature works.
That stuff would make the most epic friggin' organite like aggregates, man.
Oh, exactly. Well, Joe, we got to do that. I've been meaning
to get enough, man,
for years.
Do you have a UV light that you could put it under?
Somewhere my main one's burnt out a few months ago, but I will find my UV light.
It'd be interesting to see what it looks like under the UV light. Maybe shake it up a little bit.
It doesn't glow under the UV.
Yeah, most don't glow. There's actually a couple of types. There's the yellow state that glows and the green state that glows, but every other color, including the white and the purple, does not.
Interesting.
It is curious that through its transition, it generates phosphorescence at some points.
Oh, right? Just like without a UV light, it'll generate phosphorus?
No, phosphorescence, which means that if you stimulate it with one photonic wavelength, it'll convert it.
Phosphorus.
Going back to the electron shell, and when it moves, that you get a photon emitted. That if you have a mass reaction into that, that could explain where and how and when that happens.
It's true. Yeah, through its phase shifts. Yeah.
Weird space stuff.
Well,
what's your yield and your time to make something like that?
I've got it down to within minutes and large amounts, and that it's like it seems mass per mass. I'm not going to say weight per weight, but it's tough to even say volume for volume because it's so much less dense. It expands out, but it seems like weight. You get a lot of Ormus from your metal, but you see your metal straight dissolving, breaking down into it specifically.
So your Ormus in that case, that's like analogous to like a sort of like a flux or what do you call it?
Well, so
like
here's
slag.
The thing: orbitally rearranged electron molecule or something. I gotta look up the exact acronym, but the point being the nuclear or polarized spin or whatever the heck it is, the Ormus is essentially, this monoatomic is in that perfect base coherent neutral state.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah. ORME, ORME small s, is orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements.
Oh, so it's your monoatomic in the suspension.
Yeah, well, it's explaining the electron shell and the broken down covalent bonds and its neutrality. And then when you have a diatomic, when it's oxygen, then you have magnetic, and it's, I believe, like negative charged, and then hydrogen is the electric and the positive.
Okay, let me restructure where I was trying to go with this. What happens to your impurities and your byproducts?
They should go to the bottom.
Oh, they neutralize and they're able to be flushed out.
Yeah, they do sink right to the bottom, like Mike just said.
Okay.
You take the top surface water out.
All right.
Yeah,
well, not necessarily the top. You take the layer barrier that self-separates out.
You just leave the bottom.
Sorry, the top is the oils, and then the bottom is the solid colloidal nanos left over, and then also any impurities turn into
heavy metal,
dissolve state into the water, and then when you flush the water with distilled water several times, then you're diluting and getting all of the remaining impurities out.
Yeah, the concerns aren't all that dissimilar from the way that you have to make moonshine.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, at the beginning of moonshine production, you get your what do they call that? So you've got your ethanol, your methanol. So you get methanol first. Methanol will cause you to go blind and cause severe bodily damage.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens between about 140 and 160 degrees Celsius. Now you go up to about 100. Sorry, no, that's Fahrenheit. Yeah, that is Fahrenheit. Yeah, 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit to get your methanol out. You got to get rid of that first, what they call the head of your distillation process. Then between 160 and about 190, you're getting mostly just your pure ethanol. So in refinement processes, that's what we use to burn in our vehicles. And when you go to the gas pump and you pay an extra fee in order to get 10% garbage fuel added to your gasoline, that's ethanol. That's the process that they make it by. And then after ethanol, you start to get water vapors and the other heavier alcohols. So those are pretty much useful. Anything above or below that region is useless. But in BurnEye's case, you can actually see what those regions are. Just like a fractional distillation column, you can actually see them self-separate out into organizing layers that they do all of their very own. Even if you leave them just sitting and you don't put any more electrical charge into it, they'll self-separate out into layers because they still have that charge inside of them contained within the colloidal state suspended particles.
Right, so it's like a crystal reformation process, just not bound.
Right, so you just got to suck out the parts that you want and leave the rest behind.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. By the way, they sell ethanol-free gas by me.
But by the way, to go back to the electrolysis thing and the sound, resonance, or vibration you were talking about earlier, why don't you use ice instead of water and convert it directly into gas? Because ice
sublimation. And exactly. Yes, I do some of that.
Sublimation is when you go from a solid into a gas. This is a liquid into a gas, so that's evaporation.
But I've done the solid when it's frozen in the middle of winter. So also straight into gas with the small amounts of voltage too. It's
I hate to disappoint, but even in that case of what you looked at as sublimation, it was still going into a liquid state just at the surface of the electrode.
Right.
So
yeah, you're right. So something like the sun distillation or exposure.
That would be it. Yeah, what Hudson originally claimed when he placed that sample into the bright sunlight and it absorbed those photons, at some point it would quote unquote flash over and completely eliminate itself. It would just disappear in a bright flash, producing photons and a electromagnetic radiative emission, and then the material was gone.
That's very fascinating.
You know, the Challenger, it went into a different field based on this theory.
I would like to see how you put that together in your mind initially, because I'm kind of curious on how the Challenger relates to Monoatomics and arms.
Yeah, I was trying to get to that one too. Are you still on sublimation?
Because it's space-time dilation. It's trapping time. You understand?
Interesting. So
Plasma?
you're suggesting
Well, this
that
data matter.
his simple process, even at extremely low energies, is somehow affecting the refractive index and producing these warp field effects.
I
Is that
actually
right?
get what you're saying. Like, wow,
If that
a
was the case,
revolution.
that would be pretty interesting.
I have more for later, but
Oh.
Lulu, she's a genius.
She
Sometimes
pulled it out on him.
she's
She is.
undeniable.
no,
she answers before
oracle.
you ask your question, so she knows what you're gonna ask.
She's an oracle, exactly. Straight wisdom.
She is an oracle. I've never thought of her that way, but she absolutely is.
no, guys. I'm a seeker, and if it's a click together, it a lot.
Lulu, if I may ask you to stop messing with whatever the heck you're playing with right now, because the audio of what that noise is completely overtakes the sound of your voice.
I'm not messing with anything.
Oh, somebody was playing with something. Who was that?
That's Mikey.
Sorry,
Chip
it's my the chips. Sorry.
That's always Mike.
Damn it, Mike!
By the end.
Cookies or something. I don't
I
know.
was gonna say that shit legitimately sounds like an excuse when you're not trying to talk to somebody on the phone. What was that?
We're breaking up in the Challenger right now.
My Mike got paid by the CIA to interfere with the communication.
With his own show.
Oh, my electricity flickered twice during the show. So yeah, somebody. Yeah.
Question for the panel. If light is the only constant thing, is time not also constant?
No, because the light can still be present but shifts frequency.
Yeah, that part I understand, but what happens to time? I mean, it can move around.
The same thing that time does to light.
Time
it shifts the frequency.
Changes when space and different density, on different planets, time's completely different.
Bernie,
correct?
I didn't hear what you said there.
On different planets, time is different, moving at different rates, right?
Exactly.
Imagine time as a field force. Model time as a field force.
If you subject yourself to the frequency of that planet, I can understand that.
I'm just checking on you.
Adam, please go on with this, because you have probably the best understanding with experimenting and having results of time dilation.
Right. So, when I ran across Wilbert Smith, he has probably the best explanation I've seen of it. And imagine, he starts out with dimensional analysis. I wouldn't even go that far. He says length, next 90 degrees is area, next 90 degrees is volume, next 90 degrees is movement, typically spin. That would be time.
Say those ones again. I think that's exactly how I've written it down in my thing. Please repeat that.
Okay. So first dimension you can look at literally would be length. You spin it around in your consciousness and you look at it, no matter which angle you put it at, it's still length. Second is going to be area. That's at 90 degrees to length.
Yeah.
Or a right angle, I should say. Right,
and
then
your
volume.
Your third dimension is volume, right? You're getting magnitudes of exponential increase in both density as well as geometric dimensional volumes and surface area.
Right. So keep in mind that Wilbur Smith's theorem is based on the idea of geodesics.
Well, so volume doesn't have time, then you get to fourth, which does have time.
Correct, because then you have motion. So you're stacking these fields up. These are not independent fields that are just being added arbitrarily together. You're taking the concept of 1 point, you're expanding that into 2 points, so now you have the fundamental duality of the universe. Now you have length with 2 points. You expand into one more dimension, adding to the 2 points a third dimension, which is now volume. you expand the third dimension of volume into one more point by adding it, which then becomes motion within volume.
Here's the thing, though. Gas is a first dimensional, liquid is a second.
No, it's not first dimensional.
Third, and plasma is fourth. And when you truly wrap your head around what I just said.
Well, there's dimensionality. There's dimensionality to all sorts of things.
Dimensionalities of matter.
And time has no dimension.
No, time is part of the dimension.
Is the fourth dimension. Plasma does have time with it.
So check this out. Isaac Bentov had a good way of explaining this, and he just gave a simple chart of time and distance, being relative to one another. And it was just literally a curve. And on either side of the curve was Planck's distance. So, and, was the Planck scale. So the critical factor of that was that once you crossed over into the Planck scale, you're actually removed from time and space, and time and space is collapsed into something that you're out of. Now, here's something interesting, okay? Your mind works off of, two hemispheres, your brain, right?
Statement.
And that has flow patterns. Those flow patterns actually are capable of sustaining different time dilation through a broken locality, okay? And so everybody's sense of time is different, even though you could observe time as being consistent. So that's why when you're waiting somewhere and it feels like it's forever, it actually kind of is. And it's just a very unique way to look at it.
Hot damn, that's worth a slice out,
It's pretty
Bernie.
bold to say that,
Well, I'm fucking bold, and I'm saying
time
it.
stops, but at everywhere else it doesn't. I mean, that's
It's not bold to say, brother. Close your eyes, meditate, cross Planck's distance, come back up.
Hold on, I got to add into this. So going back to what I just said about dimensional matter and the phase states, and then time-space relativity, and then you go into density that is volume, and when you're interacting between two-dimensional plates or three-dimensional volumes now, and you're folding back into having either space or time, but also not having time or needing time because it's actually folded into that dimensional matter of the fabric of what limits the dimensions that you're using in it, if that makes sense.
You're taking for granted that time being a dimension.
Yeah, it always. So that yes, it always is.
Well, I mean, it has to be.
Yeah, but
everything
that
was
was invented by Minkowski. If time is a dimension, then you can go back in time.
No. See, it's time, space, and that they're tied together. So when it folds into a smaller two-dimensional, it's included in the matter, and it's in that space, so that it's like a disk. It's not flowing time. It's just moments of time.
Okay, I need to stop everyone here and point out something really important. And this goes back
with your locale.
So just hold on for a second, Mike. This is super important. As Adam pointed out in Wilbert Smith's theorem, you have this idea that you take the first idea of a point, and then you expand it into a line, and then you expand that into a volume, and then you expand that into a motion within a volume. I want to point out that on step 4, where you get the fourth dimension, which we're calling time, that is actually the start of dimension of the first dimension again. So you've taken the 3 dimensions, and now you've added a point to that fourth dimension that now can move freely within the 3 dimensions. But you've started the loop. Time. You started the loop back over. So here's the important part to understand. When you started that loop back over and you add fourth time, Wilbert Smith didn't have exactly the full explanation, because there is 3 time, or 3 different dimensions of time for the 3 different dimensions of space that give you volume. So when we're talking about volumetric time space or space time, we have 3 dimensions of time and 3 dimensions of space. So let's start out with that.
So hold on, it's very interesting you say that. I did this whole entire special early on when I started casting with Nathan. That was my theory, and it wasn't based on anything that I had read, and I'm not saying I came up with it, but it was the descent of energy to matter. And it went through all the sequence of events that happens from, a potential all the way till that potential condensates into matter. And the unique thing about this is when I charted it out, it goes down in dimensionality from highest to lowest, and then comes back up. And when it comes back up, it comes back into the fourth dimension, because that's what gives the context of the dimensionality. So if you have a three-dimensional object and it's just floating in a black vacuum, it's not relative to anything else. It's only in the fourth dimension of space that it becomes relevant, and it's only relevant through the motion of the time at that point, because it goes back down and then comes back up, and where it meets is right in the middle in the fourth dimension. So it's,
and in
I don't know,
between the fourth
really,
dimension, it doesn't have dimensions.
Your time on oscillation, right? On atomic structures. That's how we measure currently time, whether it's cesium time or whatever, you know, like it's an oscillation of an element. So if
time is just induced by the energy density you're in. So the more energy density, the slower the time will rate. It's very simple.
It really
the
is.
Highest density.
You're exactly right, Phil. It is very simple, and it's exactly like that. Energy density momentum. Excuse me. Stress energy momentum density. That's the full term. That is the catalyst for how fast the speed of light is within any volume of space. So if you wanted to build your own TARDIS, you need to understand this fundamentally, that the amount of space within a space is determined by the stress energy momentum density of that space. And if you put more energy into a local space than exists outside of that space, the amount of space inside will become bigger, because the speed of light will be slower, and now you can fit more physical stuff, that is matter, into that space.
Exactly. So sorry, Louis, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just had to say to answer what you were saying.
I'm listening. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what it is. You said it yourself, Jeremiah. So,
energy density is what, more time?
Correct. More energy density is more time.
So are you saying, Phil, by your experiment with the time, the two clocks, digital and analog, are you speeding up the clock or slowing it down?
Your frame of reference. Let me ask you this, Mike. Are you asking what the clock feels, or what you see the clock doing from the outside? Because you need to define.
Now we're getting into perspective and how time.
Well, yeah, you have to define where the observer is, because the clock is going to think the clock is going to think that the outside is going slower.
The clock is going to think that the outside of its shell is moving slower than inside, and then it's its own entity. The clock is an entity now.
Right. It's the same exact scenario that I described about the time dilation of consciousness.
I think I may have made a mistake. I get dyslexia on this one. So this is the observer perspective on which side of the equation you are on. I think I might have just mixed that up. And if I did, don't listen to what I just said. Yeah, let me think. Okay, so your clock on the inside is effectively slowed down as seen from the outside of, let's see. Yeah, so there's more space within the
correlated
space.
to energy density of more density.
Yeah, that means that whatever wavelength you say, okay, so this I have to think of this in radiative functions in order to consider the energy density that you're adding to it by radiating a signal.
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking more energy density would block the time field and not slow it down
or faster. So would a watch, if you're watching, if you place a watch inside of a high stress energy momentum density field, in your idea, does that watch tick slower from our point of view on the outside or faster? And I can't actually answer this in radiative.
There's a super easy way to remember this. The energy of the entire planet Earth slows down the time here. It's why speed is slower on the Earth and faster up in the satellites. That's what does it. All the energy, all the matter, and all the energy of the planet slows the time down.
Exactly. So the more dense the energy density is, the slower the clock rate will be.
Yes.
Through what means? Interference or?
No, the energy
It's path
density.
length. It's a geodesic. Okay, so here's the thing: what you call a straight line. If you were to shine a laser beam from where you're standing right now to the wall, or where you're sitting right now to the wall, and you measure that length, right? It takes light a certain amount of time to exit your laser pointer, travel through the free space and the air, which slows it down because that energy, momentum, density of the air molecules and their constituent charged particles and their neutrons, which also have a magnetic moment, which affects both epsilon and mu of local space. All those things, the charged particles in motion and the neutrons with their magnetic moment that's constantly inverting, affect epsilon and mu. So they have a localized higher stress energy momentum density than the free space around them. And it's in fact the interaction of that high stress that causes them to develop functions like the strong and weak nuclear force. Quarks, because they assemble the individual particles of the nucleus, have this property of polarizing the space around them because they're rotational. And now we've discovered through the most advanced physics that we have today that over 99.9999 something percent of the mass of each individual subatomic particle making up the nucleus of an atom is in fact caused by the rotation of the quarks, not by their existence, because they weigh pretty much nothing on their own if they were stationary, if they could ever be stationary. But they can't be, and they never will be. So almost all the mass that we see of these subatomic particles comes from motion. And this motion is all relative. Right. So ultimately, go ahead, please.
Can I jump in real fast here? I seen an article in the last week where they were able to freeze light, a photon.
Yeah, the Italians.
Yeah, the Italians.
Yeah. I'm just beginning to understand this stuff. Now it's all changed again. Great.
Yep, yeah, welcome to the club, dude.
Dude.
Yep, they were able to freeze photons.
I still can't even get the link between light and time.
That's absolutely
technically,
wild.
here's what they did. Okay, so I can answer that. I have an answer to that experiment, and it kind of makes it seem less magical.
Light is a simple particle.
The light isn't frozen, but we will call it a trapped light state. But what happens is the light gets absorbed and converted into angular momentum within the nucleus. It's known as dynamic nuclear orientation. It's actually what Falcon Space is working on. And it's been done in many ways before, and you can make it happen naturally simply by having a chiral material which experiences two things simultaneously. One, a magnetic field, and two, a tangential electric field. Well, the chiral material undergoes motion through both fields.
And boom, you just explained the magic of why my electrolysis setups are able to program nuclear spin orientation and make the pure monatomic.
Huh, isn't that curious?
Hey, fellas, on that note, I'm calling it a night. Thanks for having me on. I'll catch you later.
Much love.
Take it easy, and thanks for stopping by.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, we're gonna square up here soon. We've almost done 3 hours.
Could be
I would say this is the time to end the show.
And
I have one last comment on time. In this model, gravity would be the gradient of the time field.
Yeah, finish your thoughts.
Gravity is the gradient of the time field, he says.
No, but gravity, but there's
okay.
The energy density.
Two gravities.
The energy density, you have the electric field, the magnetic field, the gravitomagnetic field, the gravitoelectric field. You have a lot of different flavors of energy, but it's all the same. It's all energy density, you know?
Phil's comment gets a booyah from me. Way to nail it again.
There's been several boom moments tonight.
Today has been a really great show. I swear to you, if you do not slice this up, I'm going to.
Yeah, it's a great show tonight.
Yeah,
great panel.
Awesome show. I was kind of worried I wasn't going to have enough people log in tonight and join me on Good Friday.
And then Bernie was like, "Are we streaming, Mike?"
Hey, man. I guess something really special happens on Easter when you get the League of Extraordinary Inventors together.
Exactly.
It was a Good Friday indeed.
Exactly.
I feel like drinking more beer for the two. Cheers, man. Cheers.
I'll toast you. I'll toast you.
Cheers.
I'll toast you a non-alcoholic carbonated drink.
Exactly.
Cheers.
Yeah,
I gotta drink water.
We go live to air again next Friday night at 9:00 Eastern or 6:00 Pacific. I'd like to thank Chat. Chat was great. Lit it up really good tonight. Had a great panel, great conversation. Everybody enjoy your holidays, and we'll see everybody next week.
Mike, before you end it, I just want to show one quick little thing that I found very interesting when I hooked up these carbon rods in the first electrolysis.
Perfect. We've got 5 minutes.
And it turns the water extremely blue.
I really, really like the color of that. What's in it?
Yeah.
So we want to know what's in it. Are you going to tell us, or is that a secret sauce?
That's a secret sauce for another day. But I just wanted to show that off. And
it's like a nice aquamarine.
Yeah.
It is a very aesthetically pleasing color. It reminds me, speaking of what Phil was talking about with drinking, right? It reminds me of the very first drink that I ever had when I was not quite legal age to drink, and it was called Hypnotic with a Q at the end.
Oh, I know that
Oh,
drink.
I remember Hypnotic. That's imported from France. It is a type of cognac mixed with sweet juices. That Hypnotic.
You are correct. Yeah, so that was the first drink that I had, and I can tell you it sent me down a very interesting, what started out as a good road that then became a abusive road where I was drinking way too much, and that's why I had to quit. But I will still say, like, that drink is visually beautiful. Just looking at the bottle, if you didn't ever drink it, but you had it up on your shelf, it looks cool. And your stuff kind of looks almost exactly like that. Like, the color is extremely similar. It's not quite as deep, but give it time.
Right. So
Another one. That's you.
And we're not saying I'm gonna drink that because that'll probably kill. But I will test it to see. I'm guessing if it went super blue, it's probably going to be like top alkaline or not acidic, right?
Well, keep this in mind then. You have to test your soil pH because it probably is. And if you find out, which you should be testing with pH strips, don't try to use a digital meter. I'm sorry, but
no, I got a whole bunch of pH strips. I guess if you want me to show a little pH strip.
Phil, if we're drinking tonight, we're drinking. I'm busting out the Yoo-Hoo, baby.
Well, you got 2 minutes to the ideal show end time. So if you can do it within 2 minutes, then hit it fast. Go.
Man, you're the one with the bar over there. Like, stop faking it.
Benny's bar.
Today on What's the pH? Bernie will test a weird sample of who knows what.
Right.
Bernie's creating a new Gatorade.
Something's
will
going
it
to
be
fall
acid
out
or
of
will
one
it
of
be
those jars.
base? Who's going to be the alchemical ace?
He needs to put a little tiny shark in the blue jar.
Put some color in it so you can drink it, you know. Put some color so you can resell it afterwards.
Do not consume the magical tincture unless you want erosion of your most sacred sphincter.
And he's not a lion. Don't be going and trying this because, yeah, it actually, it turned pink, so it's extremely acidic. Even though the water itself turned blue, acidic pink.
Yeah, what is it? What, a pH 1?
Yeah, it's probably a pH 4.
No, I think higher than that. I think it's like
right, 2.
No, higher than that, he said.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right. Well,
all right, guys. We'll square it up.